everybody. I am Autumn, and you are watching the Friendly Neighborhood Atheist Twitch and YouTube channel. And I am here today with Arden of Eden. Hello, Arden. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So we're going to do Ask an Atheist today. I'm going to ask you some questions because you are an atheist. And I've pretty much seen you everywhere. Like you've been all over the ACA shows, Atheist Community of Austin. You've been on a lot of different channels like The Line, this channel, as an atheist advocate, or I don't know if you prefer the term, some people prefer the term activist or advocates. I don't know if it matters to you.
No, not particularly. I mean, I think there's probably like a meaningful distinction between those two terms, but I feel like they both kind of apply. So,
yeah, same. How did you get started in talking about atheism and religion online?
So I have always been, well, not always. Like I've done my like deconversion story a few places. Like since I realized I was an atheist, I was always kind of like in that angry phase where like I didn't know there were online circles doing this, but I was always like having these conversations with my friends where they would be like, "Oh, like I love this like traditional like or this like Christmas tradition or something," and I would be like, "Oh, I would go into like angry atheist mode and like talk about like the history and why it bothered me or something." And then I think I was first exposed to Jimmy Snow. I'm going to guess some sort of algorithm thing. And I think that it just became like a rabbit hole. And I was like, oh my God, there's entire communities online of people who like share my experiences and share how I feel about these things. And yeah, I think I just got like really engaged like in talking with the communities. And then at one point on Secular Sexuality, they had asked if there was any like sex workers in the audience or cam girls, if they wanted to do a show, like to contact them. And I was like, oh, well, I'm a cam girl, so I'll reach out and see what they say. And then from there, it turned into me being on a bunch of different shows. So kind of.
Awesome. That's so cool. So it was just kind of like serendipitous that you found it and got involved and you were like excited to talk about it because it's obvious that it's something that you're passionate about. Where do you think your passion comes from?
That's a good question. I've often wondered this. Like, I have like a couple of like hypotheses, but I guess probably no clear answer. Like, I grew up, well, my family wasn't particularly pious themselves. Like, I did go to a fundamentalist school and a fundamentalist church. So I was exposed to kind of like really radically clinging to your beliefs. And I grew up with a narcissist of a father who would kind of be like, not to like overspill like 2 minutes into the show. He's kind of engaged in like some gaslighty things. So like to me, learning like how to like know what I'm saying is true and to be like sure of it was like really important to me. So like when that stuff happened, I could be like, well, I'm not going to engage in an argument with him, but at least I know for me what's going on. And I think that just kind of ended up turning me into kind of like a righteously indignant person. So like when I saw things that I was like, no, that's not true, and it harms people, like it would really bother me.
Yeah, so it started out as a thing where you were standing up for yourself, and now it's like you're standing up for whole communities because there's a whole bunch of us out here that we don't subscribe to religion, and yet a lot of times it's used against us or like held over our heads. And so we need people like you to speak out and be a voice for those who maybe don't even have the words to stand up for themselves. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. I think you see this all the time on like atheist call-in shows where people will call in and be like, oh, I'm the only atheist in like a 50-mile radius of where I live. And I remember that's how I felt. Like I grew up in New England, which I know a lot of people in the US will think that that's like a relatively secular part of the country, but to me my experience was still I was surrounded by Christians. So Like,
Yeah, I think for the late deconstructor, it's important to find these online communities because probably if you're deconstructing Christianity later in life, like as an adult, I mean, the reason why you probably stayed religious for so long, it's one possibility, obviously it doesn't apply to everyone, is probably because of your environment. So I know that I felt very alone, like kind of what you were saying, just to relate to what you were saying. You said you would just talk about it to your friends and your family, and you didn't know that there was these communities out there, and it's kind of like, let's get the word out there. Now, switching gears a little bit, I know that you are a sex worker, you are a trans woman, and so you advocate for trans people, you advocate for atheists, you advocate for sex workers. Is there a topic that you feel like is the most important to talk about right now, and which one is it and why?
definitely topics around trans rights, like no question. I think, like, in my opinion, a system of government that would like completely liberate trans people and queer people from oppression would include a liberation of sex workers. Because as marginalized people, and this applies to all marginalized groups, we are often pushed to sex work out of necessity. It's one of the only like fields of work that you can get into quickly that can get you enough money to survive quickly. So to me, a framework of like queer liberation is kind of how I think of it. Because while my focus is on trans rights, because I think they're the most oppressed group and they're the one that I'm a part of, so I'm obviously more passionate about that. Um, I do care about liberation for the entirety of the LGBT community. But yeah, I think uh, queer liberation and sex work have been hand in hand. Like even when we think back to like Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, like these people who were like figureheads at the, the real birth of the like gay liberation movement, they were getting arrested for doing survival sex work all the time. So these things are really intertwined. I love talking about them individually and like where like maybe they have like individual like unique needs, but I think there's so much overlap. It's like kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Do you think that there is anything that most people should know or don't understand about the trans and queer experience?
Um, gosh, this is hard because I'm so deep in activism. Sometimes it's hard to know what uh like the cis heteronormative experience really is on this. I think the first thing that comes to mind is that like a lot of the times in these conversations, you get like the attack helicopter joke and like like a level up on like the like intelligence scale of this is they'll criticize like self ID laws, which are basically laws that are saying that like in the legal system, you can gain recognition as the sex you identify as or the gender you identify as by just declaring like, I am a trans woman, therefore I would like to go through the process of getting documents that reflect that gender. Um, but because that's how the system works legally, people think that trans people are just like out here choosing to be trans. Like I just woke up one day and I was like, golly gee, I think it would be so cool to have surgery where bones in my face are shaved down and where I shove bags of silicone under my chest. Like, no, obviously not. I did not choose to be trans. It, in fact, is something that I tried with every fiber of my being to run away from, uh, until eventually I learned that, like, there was no escaping it. The only path that was going to involve me like staying alive and ever finding peace was accepting who I was.
Awesome. And you should. It is Do you think it's the environment you were in, or why do you think it is that you didn't want to be trans? Like, do you think it's the overall society or the particular environment you were in, or what was the main reason why you didn't want to be trans?
I think it was a little of both. Um, obviously, like we all grew up watching the same movies and the same TV shows, and you know, the notion of a man dressed as a woman, or like that's how trans people were portrayed, was always like this disgusting thing, this like insidious evil thing. They were even often like violent people. So and also growing up in the fundamentalist like experience, I remember I got chastised for having my nails painted and for having longer hair, like wanting to grow my hair out. So I think I learned pretty quickly that like, even though I didn't feel like a boy, I was a boy and I was supposed to be a boy, and that feeling like a girl was wrong. And I think when you're taught that so like strongly at such a young age, I think you really internalize those feelings. But then like it didn't help that when I became a teenager and I first started expressing the fact that I was trans to like my family, and to my friends at school and stuff like that, I got insane amounts of harassment. Like I've gotten death threats and I've gotten bullied so badly. And like my relationship with my dad was really good when I was like a boy, and or when I thought I was a boy. That fell apart. And like, so like my transness was the source of like kind of all of the problems in my life. And like in a way that's true, but it's not that like me being trans it's wrong. It's that how society interacts with trans people like assumes that they are like bad or evil, or like that they are a wrong thing.
Yeah, like all from social conditioning too. It's crazy that just basically like a meme that comes into a society and people just parrot it because they're like fear is instilled in them, and then they instill that fear in other people. And people be like, would you agree that I feel like people just become conditioned to think a certain way most of the time when it comes to like our morality? Like, of course, there's going to be like reinforcement such as like pain and pleasure, but the social reinforcement part of it is just like this like this meme that gets a hold of people. Do you know what I'm talking about? Would you agree?
Absolutely. Like even in the atheist and skeptic communities, like you see this all the time with like Richard Dawkins and like the intellectual dark web, like these people who like posture themselves as intellectuals but will take part in these like really like garbage and like not relevant talking points, like, oh, these are like, you know, we can't allow self-ID because men will just choose to be women, so we should like, you know, make spaces only based on the genitals you had at birth or something like that. And it's like just these kind of standards that no one's actually going to hold up. Like nobody's going to be like stopping someone at every single bathroom door, be like, excuse me, can you please take off your genitals, and like compare a picture of your genitals at birth to make sure that it's all good.
Right. And especially not with the fear mongering that they're perpetuating. It's like they think, oh yeah, like men are just going to choose to be women. It's like, well, not while like, no, that's not how it works. I agree. Like you didn't choose this experience, but it's like, yeah, I just agree with you. It's I don't know. It just makes me crazy because I'm like, what do you? Okay. Anyway, let's talk about something fun. So, I know that you are a cam girl. You do gaming on Twitch as well. What on like and you do the call-in shows too. What do you have the most fun doing online?
That's an interesting question. I really like arguing. I like debate. I think it's fun. I think it's like intellectually stimulating. Like I love having conversations with people where like the like actual like answer to a problem isn't very clear, and we can kind of like hash out like our reasons for like why we are on what side of position we are on. So I'd probably say like call-in shows are the most interesting to me. I also think it's interesting because like I feel like I'm able to like hone that skill where I'm like, you know, somebody can present an argument or like present it in a way that I'm not familiar with, and I have to think like, how do I on my feet like navigate to communicating this person like or like not even just communicating like what my position is, but also learning how to like suss out what their position is through like the very limited lens that we have with language.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it does get exhausting defending trans rights all the time, especially because some arguments are just kind of like haggard and they're not really like if this person went to Google, unless their SEO is really corrupted by like past search results, like they probably could solve this for themselves really quickly. But like aside from that, I really love doing like art and games on Twitch. I think that's really fun. Just because it's a chance to like just kind of like we're doing here, like rather than like making everything about like getting down to like the philosophical meat of a problem, like just like hanging out and like talking and having fun and not trying to take things always so seriously.
Yes, I definitely feel like I actively try to balance that because I know that like I am engaging in debate and arguments, and I don't want to become like a combative person or a contrarian. Like, I mean, contrarians are funny, but I don't want to be one of them. But I was going to ask, how do you feel like you're developing those skills, or how do you feel like you developed those skills in order to be able to do that? Is it just by doing the call-in shows, or do you practice on Discord or Twitter, or like did you learn debate in school? Where do you think you got those skills from?
Well, kind of like I was saying earlier, I think it started from having like a people in my life who would be like contest like the most trivial matters of reality, and I would have to be like, wait, but I can point to all these reasons that I know this is the case. Like, what do you mean you don't think it is? Like, but also when I was in school, I went to school for psychology, but I did take a couple of courses in philosophy because it had always been interesting to me. And I actually took a course on the philosophy of God because that was like that was the first time I'd ever been exposed to the idea that it was like up for debate, that there was a question to be had.
And this is when you were a believer?
Not quite. So like my timeline of deconversion is kind of weird. I always kind of say I stopped, I think, believing in the Christianity and like the Abrahamic God probably around like 14. Like it was right when I came out as trans that like the entirety of the religious community that I had around me like pulled out. They like told my parents they weren't welcome at church anymore, and like that my mom was a bad mother for allowing me to like transition and all this stuff. So I think the notion that those people were like the chosen good people was like shattered for me very early. But I hung on to some kind of like wooey beliefs, like like I thought I could do like out of body meditation, and like I was really into like spirit science, that kind of thing.
Did you try like astral projection?
Oh
and that kind of
yes.
stuff?
Oh totally.
Yeah.
I was pretty convinced that like I had like a whole thing going on. It's a little cringy to look back on, but also it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Do you have any stories about that? Because I've only tried it once, and I have a story just from that one time. So I'm sure you have at least one story, right?
Yeah, I actually got like really good at like, so I'll say this: astral projecting, out of body experiences, and that stuff. I obviously I don't think that's real, but I did get really good at meditation from that time, and that's actually served me in like my adult life. I've been able to be like, oh, like this experience is familiar to me, when I'm using it in like a applied, like evidence-based way. But yeah, I had this whole experience one time while I was doing this like astral projecting out of body thing where I thought I had experienced a past life. Um, it it was basically the plot of I don't know if you know Miss Saigon. It's
No.
I think it's a movie as well, but it's also like a musical that's based I think it's in like the I'm gonna totally bomb. I'm not a history person. It's based on like either like the Korean or Vietnam War, and it's about like this soldier who fell in love with this woman there, and there's Anyway, it was like basically the plot of that movie. So I kind of feel like I probably saw that movie at some point and didn't realize and like internalized the plot. And so when I was doing this out of body thing, I was like, oh, in this past life, I was this woman in this war and I fell in love with this like soldier from afar. And yeah, it was a whole thing.
That's awesome. But see, okay, here's the thing. I know we're atheists. I know we're supposed to be skeptical. Like not every atheist is, but like we're supposed to be good skeptics, right? That's like the cliche at least. Or like the stereotype. But I think that dabbling in those kinds of things is still fun, or like we still have, like, you were a psychology major. It's like we're still human. We still have human psychology. So like when I am working with kids and there's a dandelion and we're blowing the dandelions, like I'm actually making wishes, because what fun would it be to just be like, well, that's all fake and superstition. Like, yes, I don't feel like we should rely on superstition for the answers, because there are better answers from like what's testable and provable and all that kind of stuff. But like, don't you think it would be a little boring if we just never dabbled?
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it was a really cool moment of kind of like rebellion too, because our culture is so like steeped in Christianity and like Christian culture that it really has become almost more of a cultural thing than even necessarily like a religious thing. And yeah, for me, I got really into like I wasn't ever into like tarot cards, but I thought crystals were like pretty cool. And the notion that like these little rocks had like magic powers that could like heal my like brain was like, I think especially as a young person who was like, I didn't have God or my community really anymore. And I think I felt really alone. The thought of having these like super powered rocks was just like a really cool idea to me. Yeah, I think it's like, I don't know, the imagery of that stuff and how much against the grain it goes, I think is really cool. And I think it sets a good like precedent, at least in the sense of like if you're going to engage with tradition, like you should at least have good reason, because like other traditions can be just as valuable as like yours. So like if something is kind of shitty and harmful, or maybe has some bad origins, like it might be worth re-examining, like, is this really worth my time? Or maybe should I like put my focus more on something that's like good and like for any person, or like good in like a secular way.
Yeah, like has positive psychological benefits too. Like,
right.
you know, yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about gaming. What is your favorite game to play?
Oh gosh. So I feel like there's two answers. There's like my favorite game to play right now is probably a game that I don't play on stream because I'm really bad and I'm never gonna try to be good. It's called Valorant. It's like a first person shooter. It's like there's 2 teams of 5 people, and each player has like their own like set of like abilities that they can use. That's like sometimes like helpful. Like some characters can like heal you, and some characters can like blind the other characters, like briefly. And the goal is to like plant a bomb, have it go off, and like win the round. And like the defense team might try to like defuse the bomb or something. So that's really fun. And then my second answer is like my all-time favorite series, which I absolutely love. It's called Kingdom Hearts. It's super cheesy. It's so like it's the corniest game ever, but it's so fun. I don't know if you've heard of Final Fantasy, but basically it's like characters like that, these like pretty anime boys, and they go through the Disney worlds. And the idea is that like there's like a darkness that can like take over people's hearts, and you just gotta like beat the bad guys. I don't know. It's really basic, but it's fun. Really cute. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Yeah. Okay. I also did want to ask you about Mario Kart, because we are supposed to play soon.
I know.
We're going to. And I want to know, do you have a go-to character? Well, this might be cheating on my part. Maybe I shouldn't know anything ahead of time, but do you have a go-to character? Like, what's your, or in Super Smash Bros. Too, I want to know, like, in the Mario world and in Super Smash Bros., like, who are your go-to characters?
I think in Mario Kart, I really like Rosalina. She's just super cool. I love like the sparkly blue, like aesthetic. Gosh, for Super Smash Bros, I'm really bad. I will say that up front.
I feel like I would like to think that I'm good, but I'm probably not. I just go with Kirby, and I think Kirby sucks, but I think Kirby's fun to play with, so I never win.
Kirby's fun because then you get to like your main character is literally everybody.
Yes. And the colors are cute too.
Yes. I think for Smash Bros, I'd probably say like I think I like Sonic, but it's just because I've also always been a Sonic fan. I always thought Sonic was so cool. I was really into like they had a comic series for Sonic when I was little. I was so into that. It was so cool. But yeah, I think also like all of my friends have always been so good at games. Like they're always the kind of people who can pick up a game, have never played it, and play it like borderline competitive level like the first time. So I always say I'm bad, and I'm probably not like the worst, but I'm definitely not like my perspective is always skewed because whenever I play with people who I'm friends with, I'm always like, well, I'm definitely not that good. I won't be entering any tournaments anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I guess it'd be kind of hard to know if your friends are really good. It's like, well, what do you compare with, you know?
Yeah.
I was going to ask, so when you stream like gaming, because like I'm not into the gaming world, so I'm just learning about it. So do you just kind of like talk with people and shoot the shit, or are you not involved in the chat because you're watching the game? Like, how does that all work?
So I like to play games where I can interact with chat. I feel like for me, what's fun about Twitch is the community and the chat. I don't have like a lot of people. I have like 15 to 20 people that show up on average, and they're all like super, super engaged. But like my sense of humor and like I feel like a sign of affection from me is if I'm kind of like roasting you, if I'm like making fun of you a little bit, that's probably a sign that I'm like I like think you're cool.
Yes, that I always say roasting is my love language, because if somebody knows how to roast you where it doesn't hurt your feelings but actually makes you laugh, then you feel like cared for. Like it's like this weird thing of like they know how to make fun of you in a way that doesn't hurt your feelings. You know what I mean?
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and because it feels good to you, if you do it to other people, that means that you have affection towards them, I would say, right?
Totally. And that's so like my relationship with Chad is I feel like I like kind of bullying them all a little bit. just a little
fun.
bit. Like last stream we were doing I'm playing like a run through of the most recent Pokemon game, and like every time I'm drinking at the same time, and every time I like slur my speech while trying to read the dialogue, I'll like take another sip. But then like in between like spaces where there's like not a lot of dialogue, the chat was like, oh, we're gonna like send you our pet names and you can like roast our pet names. That was kind of like what we were doing. I was like making fun of people's pet names, which I actually ended up hurting someone's feelings because they did not realize what I was doing. They did not realize that it was like a funny joking thing, and they messaged me afterwards. But I made amends. I think I was able to communicate thoroughly that I was like, oh no, your name is probably awesome. I don't actually like I don't actually judge you for naming your dog what you named your dog. Like it was just a joke.
I know. And online's so hard too, because you don't have all the same social cues. Like you, especially with people in the chat, it's like you don't see people's facial expressions. You can't read like what they're okay with. So I feel like I'm apologizing for that kind of stuff a lot, because it's like I'm a kidder, but then tone doesn't come off on the internet. So I feel like this past year, like getting involved in all of this, I'm always like joking and then saying sorry, because then I'm like, wait, what if I hurt their feelings? And I get in my head about it. So yeah, I could definitely relate to that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on to our show today, Arden. I am going to thank our patrons. We have Cindy Plaza, Kenneth Leonard, Skye, JumpandShoot, Oz, P, Secular, Rarity, Philip, Leitch, Kaitlyn Beyond, Toast, Richard, Gilliver, Sunset Sarge, The Blazing Wizard, Pope, and Ameet, Mathew. Mathew. I couldn't tell if it was an R from that. I need a screen a little closer to my face if I'm going to be reading stuff. Anyways, thank you so much for coming on today. I had fun chatting with you.
Yeah, that was a fun one. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching.
Bye.